A very good morning to you. I'm Lee Brown. You're watching A News, and here are your top stories. Israel and Hamas have signed the first phase of a US brokered deal aimed at ending the war in Gaza. US President Donald Trump says most workers affected by the government shutdown will get back pay. And Russia and Central Asian leaders meet in Tajikistan to discuss regional security. Good morning. Today, the world wakes up to historic news from the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have signed the first phase of a US brokered deal aimed at ending the conflict in Gaza. The agreement includes the release of all Israeli hostages and a framework for a ceasefire, with international partners playing a key role in negotiations.
Oh, my microphone's broken. They're smart, but they're not smart enough. They have been
US President Donald Trump was handed a note by Secretary of State Marco Rubio during a meeting at the White House on Wednesday, moments before the president announced that a deal to end the war in Gaza was close.
The Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly, so I will take a couple of more questions.
And that announcement was that Israel and Hamas have signed off on the first phase of the US 20-point proposed Gaza peace deal. Trump said, "I am very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan." He added at the end, "Blessed are the peacemakers." It means all Israeli hostages will be released.
Welcome.
Israel, in turn, will withdraw its forces to a mutually agreed upon line, though this doesn't constitute a full troop withdrawal. The so-called yellow line from President Trump's plan has been adjusted, and both sides have agreed to a ceasefire as part of the framework of the deal. Under the terms of the agreement, Israel is expected to withdraw troops to a pre-agreed line within 24 hours of formal government approval. According to the IDF, that redeployment will leave Israeli forces in control of 53% of Gaza's territory. The agreement, brokered with the involvement of the United States, Egypt, Qatar and Turkey, marks a significant diplomatic breakthrough. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed the deal as a national and moral victory for Israel and said he will convene the cabinet to approve it. Netanyahu also held a phone call with Trump to discuss further cooperation and extended an invitation for Trump to address the Israeli parliament. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz said the entire nation is waiting and excited for the hostages' return. Posting on X, Katz described the release as a blessing and thanked both the presidents of Israel and the United States. The Israel Defense Forces welcomed the signing of the agreement for the return of the hostages, which was signed overnight. Hamas expressed gratitude to Egypt, Qatar and Turkey for mediating the talks and thanked President Trump for his role. The group confirmed it will release all remaining hostages soon, but emphasized it will not renounce the national rights of the Palestinian people, including the right to independence. The United Nations Secretary General welcomed the agreement and confirmed that the UN will support its full implementation and expand humanitarian aid delivery. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer called for the immediate lifting of restrictions on humanitarian aid into Gaza, emphasizing the importance of full implementation of the recent Gaza agreement. Australia also welcomed the deal. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese thanked President Trump for his diplomatic efforts. It remains unclear whether Hamas has agreed to fully disarm, and questions persist regarding who will govern Gaza following the implementation of the agreement. The reconstruction of Gaza is set to proceed under international supervision, ensuring oversight and support. Israel seeks a durable ceasefire, guarantees for hostage safety and assurances that Hamas will be disarmed, while Gaza's reconstruction is monitored by international partners. Hamas, on the other hand, demands permanent ceasefire terms, complete Israeli troop withdrawal to agreed lines, unrestricted humanitarian access, the return of displaced residents, and reconstruction under a Palestinian technocratic body, along with a fair prisoner exchange. While the agreement marks an historic step toward peace, its long-term success will hinge on both sides upholding their commitments and on sustained international support to guide Gaza's recovery.
Over to Israel and Gaza, and there are rare scenes of joy on both sides, with Israelis and Palestinians celebrating in what they hope is finally the end of war.
طبعا الحمد لله على وقف إطلاق النار ووقف شلال الدماء.
Both Israelis and Palestinians poured into the streets on Thursday, clapping and cheering after Israel and Hamas agreed to the first phase of US President Donald Trump's 20-point plan to end the Gaza war. Indirect talks in Egypt brought the breakthrough just a day after the second anniversary of Hamas's cross-border attack that set off the conflict. The deal, announced late Wednesday, includes a ceasefire and hostage exchange. In Khan Yunis, crowds gathered clapping and cheering after experiencing 2 years of heartache and war.
These are moments that are considered historic moments, long awaited by Palestinian citizens after 2 years of killing and genocide that was committed with arrogance against the Palestinian people.
Thank God for the ceasefire, the end of bloodshed and killing. I am not the only one happy. All of the Gaza Strip is happy. All the Arab people, all of the world is happy with the ceasefire.
This is something joyful for us, and we thank our brothers and anyone who contributed, even if verbally, to stop the war and to stop the bloodshed.
Families of hostages living in Washington, D.C. spoke by phone with Trump on Thursday, who told them their loved ones would return on Monday.
Mr. President, we believe in you. We know you've done so much for us over the past, since you became a president, and even before that. And we trust you fulfill the mission until every hostage, every 48 of the hostages are home. Thank you so much. Blessed be the peacemakers.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
They're coming back. Thank you to the people of Israel, to the soldiers. Thank you to President Trump. Thank you to all who helped bring my son and the hostages back. We won't stop. We won't stop fighting till the last hostage. Matan is coming home.
Truly, the joy is deep, but we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic until they get into the Red Cross vehicle and truly meet the IDF soldiers. Until that moment, we must pray, cry out to the gates of heaven, truly do everything with God's help.
All over Gaza and Israel, there are sounds of celebration blended with quiet prayers, hopeful for a peace that would last beyond the night.
Staying with today's top story from the Middle East, where it's understood the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is set to take effect at 2 p.m. Jerusalem time. To help us break down the latest developments is Tom Gross, political analyst calling from Tel Aviv, Israel. Tom, is this the moment? Can you give us a sense of how significant and potentially how fragile this peace deal is at this point in time?
Well, you said the key words. It is significant and it is fragile. Look, this is a moment of profound relief for Israelis and Palestinians. This has been the longest and most brutal war between Israelis and Palestinians. And I think, at least in the initial stage, it will go ahead as predicted. In fact, President Trump has indicated he is going to fly to Israel and address the Israeli parliament, Knesset, on Sunday. And the hostages should be released on Monday, and Palestinian prisoners as well. However, we have to see what will happen going forward, because there's a lot of other stages to Trump's 20-point peace plan. I would say overall, if I may, that this has been basically a victory for Israel and a defeat for Hamas and also for Iran. Potentially it is a victory in the longer term for the Palestinian people if they are in the future led by a government that is interested in their own well-being and wants to build up a Palestinian state rather than a kind of jihadi movement with lots of tunnels and weapons supplies and so on. This is a moment of optimism, and also in a wider sense in the Middle East. I think that, as Trump has indicated, he wants to push ahead with the rest of the Abraham Accords and secure a comprehensive peace deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia and a whole bunch of other Arab states that Israel doesn't have relations with.
We will get on to Donald Trump's role on that a bit later as well. But what exactly does Phase 1 include? Do we have any clarity on hostage release, Palestinian prisoner exchange, Israeli withdrawal commitments, or humanitarian arrangements? What are the fine details?
Yes, well, in brief, they are believed to be 20 living hostages. Just to remind people, almost exactly 2 years ago, October 7, 2023, 251 Israelis and also some other foreigners living in Israel, some Thais and Nepalese and Africans and so on, were kidnapped into Gaza. There believed to be 48 people left, of which 20 are living. Some of them we know are in horrendous health condition because we know this with the videos that Hamas and Islamic Jihad have put out. And according to the Trump plan, all those 20 living hostages must be released within 72 hours of the deal being signed. It will be signed today, so that's 3 days. On the Palestinian side, 250 convicted Palestinian terrorists, as Israel would call them, will be released, and about 1,700 other Palestinians, let's call them prisoners of war, those are people who have been taken into Israeli custody in the last 2 years during the course of the war, will also be released. Lots of people in Israel are very unhappy with the 250 Palestinians because they are convicted murderers and rapists among them, and this isn't in doubt because they have admitted or even boasted about the murders. And one friend in Israel said to me this morning, it's a bit ironic that Trump is celebrating a deal that releases murderers, whereas at the same time he's pursuing what he calls murderers from Venezuela and Honduras and so on being released into America. So, but anyway, that stage should go ahead. Israel to then withdraw to an agreed-upon line within Gaza, but that is only representing about half of Gaza. And then Hamas are meant to disarm, and we will see whether they actually disarm and who they will hand those arms to. Will it be to a moderate Palestinian force, which has been training quietly in Egypt across the border from Gaza recently? And then will they be buffed up by international peacekeepers? We're hearing rumors they may come from Indonesia, maybe from the United Arab Emirates, maybe from Egypt, maybe some American supervision. But look, there are lots of questions ahead. But obviously right now, today, people are relieved and they are, optimistic.
Now, I know the news, the headlines coming out this morning have a lot of people happy and joyous. But let's look at those who might push back against this news. We know that Netanyahu's faced some cabinet opposition with this peace plan. Will that dissent now fade? And on the other side, do Israel really trust Hamas to follow through in the next stages and vice versa?
So my own reading is this is all timed, and Netanyahu's government may indeed collapse because there are 5 parties in it, 2 of which are hard right parties. They may leave the government, but Israel is scheduled to have elections next year anyway. So even if the government collapses, in Netanyahu's calculation, he will hang on with a minority government until elections in a few months. So I think he realizes that by making some compromises, he may lose his hardline coalition partners. On the Palestinian side, look, I think Hamas are losers here. And it's a question of whether the Palestinian Authority that is internationally recognized and runs rules from Ramallah in the West Bank will try to assert itself back in Gaza, or whether there'll be this kind of, undefined peace, government of technocrats overseen by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and others in a transitional phase, and whether Hamas have any role to play in future, which they might do if they become a regular political party and give up what they would call armed struggle and join, the norm of Palestinian politics rather than put all their efforts into, what they might call jihad or resistance or whatever they want to call it.
Now, just to circle back to where we started, Donald Trump's taken a large degree of responsibility. We saw in sort of A News' earlier videos there that it's attributed, many of those in Israel attribute him particularly as the one who made this happen. Do you think it could have been reached without him? Do you think it could have happened so soon? Is his pressure on Netanyahu significant?
I think it is significant, but Trump loves to take a victory lap. People are very afraid to contradict Trump because he can be quite brutal. But look, I think that although international media tend to interview opponents of Netanyahu in Israel, many other Israelis are thankful to Netanyahu. He takes a lot of, criticism throughout the world and also in Israel. But militarily, he's kind of been proved correct. I don't think Hamas would have agreed to this agreement today if Netanyahu hadn't defied his own generals and gone into Gaza City in the last weeks and also kind of done what I might call a warning shot in Qatar against Hamas there. These are the key things that made Hamas realize that probably the game is up. And, I'm not sure that we ever would have got to this point with Hamas if Netanyahu hadn't taken on Hezbollah, hadn't taken on the Iranian regime who helped supply and back Hamas.
Just to pick up on something you said there, if I may, do you not think the pressure from the international media, the world leaders, has also contributed immensely to ending the war in Gaza?
No, because I think that from an Israeli point of view and from Netanyahu's point of view, this has been viewed as a kind of existential war, not just because of Hamas, but because of Iran. And even yesterday, there were rockets from Yemen, from the Houthis, from Gaza. I think Israel is a victory militarily. I think Israel is a victor in the sense that a lot of Arab states may sign an agreement. But Israel is a loser when it comes to its international reputation, which has really been battered, not just in the media, in street protests, in various allied governments in Europe being very critical, the International Court charging Netanyahu with war crimes. So it's not a victory in that sense. But I think that military pressure is what counted in the end, as it does with most wars. And I think Israel, from a military point of view, has fought this war very decisively. And I think that one has to hand it to Netanyahu, just like,
But it did take 2 years. It did take 2 years. That's a long time to get here.
It did, but, it took 18 months for the Americans and the British to defeat ISIS in Mosul. Mosul, the second city of Iraq, has a population
I'm keen not to go off on too many tangents. I do apologise.
It did take 2 years.
If I may, because I do want to stay on focus. Let's think practically. Will aid now be able to flow into Gaza? Will Israel still come under heavy global condemnation? And how long is this process going to get to where we need to get to for this to really be a ceasefire? And it's not going to go back to normal per se, but for some normalization to come into effect.
I hope that the ceasefire will go into effect today and no one else is going to die on either side and there are not going to be any bullets exchanged. Having said that, there may be rogue elements within Gaza from other groups like Islamic Jihad, so we don't know there'll be nothing. As far as aid, I think, of course, there will be an increase in aid because one of the problems is it's difficult to distribute aid for aid workers if there's live fire going on. It's easier to, get aid in if their lives aren't at risk. And I think, there is actually parts of Gaza where there's plenty of aid, but there are other parts of Gaza that need more aid. And certainly we need peace and quiet, so hospitals and doctors can operate without worrying about, air attack by Israel. As far as rebuilding, I think it can happen quite quickly. Look, Gaza's population is about 2 million, which is not that much when it comes to the amount of money that governments like Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and so on. I did the calculation. Qatar hosted the World Cup a couple of years ago. It would cost less money than they paid building World Cup facilities to rebuild Gaza to a very high, nice standard. So
Tom, I do apologise. But we are running out of time. I just want to get one quick line out of you. How important is this regional security? We've had mediators from Qatar, Egypt. Is this a new dynamic emerging? I just want this as succinctly as possible, if you could.
Yes, I think it's very important. We have both countries that are pro-Western and countries which are less pro-Western or certainly less pro-Israel involved. I think Trump may be right in that we may be coming to a point where the whole Middle East can pretty much get along, with the exception of the Iranian regime, I should point out. But we have to wait and see what will happen with the Palestinians and whether there will be a path to Palestinian statehood. That is a big question still going ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. Your insights are greatly appreciated, and we hope you have get on soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So how important were regional players such as Turkey, Egypt and Qatar in helping this peace agreement come to fruition? Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib, Director of Realign for Palestine at the Atlantic Council, talked to us about how those countries were able to get Hamas to the negotiating table.
We saw Turkey, Egypt and Qatar applying pressure on Hamas. The Turks are interested in the F-35 stealth fighter program. They want the new F-16s and to modernize their Air Force. They want sanctions relief. They want reintegration with the United States militarily and economically. The Qataris, after the strike on Doha and how upset they were, they received an apology from Israel. They received a new security package, if you will, from the United States that promised protection and enhanced commitments to Doha's national security. But in exchange, were expected to deliver Hamas, essentially, and deliver an agreement on the hostages. Same with the Turks. Same with the Egyptians, who are worried about the specter of permanent displacement of the Palestinian people from Gaza into Sinai. It is expected that Hamas will produce all living hostages within the time frame. However, the issue is with the deceased hostages who are buried in different locations throughout Gaza. Some of those locations are under a lot of rubble. Some of them are unknown at this point. Some of the operatives who were responsible for these sites are out of commission or have been assassinated or killed. And so that is one issue to account for. Another challenge is what happens, is the delivery going to happen all at once in terms of living hostages and those who are deceased? Or is this going to be spread out over a day or two? It's understood that there won't be this dragged out release as we saw earlier in the year. Nevertheless, I believe that part of the agreement was to stick to the 72 hours as outlined by President.
There are a total of 251 Israeli and foreign nationals who were taken hostage when Hamas crossed into Israel on the 7th of October. Most were freed during temporary ceasefires in 2023 and 2025, but dozens never made it home. Israeli officials believe 48 hostages remain in the Strip, but only 20 are thought to still be alive. Survivors have described harrowing conditions, from beatings and malnutrition to fear in underground tunnels. They say that some of them were moved frequently to evade detection. Others were left in total darkness for weeks. It was just more than 2 years ago when the world witnessed the events of 7th of October in Israel. We now look back at that fateful day right up until today's ceasefire announcement.
On the 7th of October 2023, thousands of people were celebrating at a music festival near Israel's border with Gaza when sirens rang out. Hamas stormed across the border, killing some 1,200 people and took 251 hostages. Within hours, Israel had declared war. Airstrikes pounded Gaza. Israel said it was targeting Hamas. Entire neighborhoods vanished in days. By November, more than 15,000 Palestinians had been killed, according to Gaza's Hamas-led health authority. The number of dead is now believed to amount to more than 60,000, and at least 550 aid workers have been killed, the highest toll in any conflict recorded by the Aid Worker Security Database. A brief ceasefire came in late November 2023, allowing aid in and some hostages out in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Lasting just 7 days, when it ended, Israel launched its ground invasion of southern Gaza. By early 2024, fighting had moved to Rafah. By spring, more than 1 million people had been displaced. The United Nations warned of famine. Israel expanded its military operations beyond Gaza, striking targets in Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and Yemen. Both Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Iran-aligned Houthi group in Yemen launched strikes on Israel in response. On the 27th of September 2024, Israeli bunker-busting bombs hit a Hezbollah complex in Beirut, killing Hassan Nasrallah, the group's leader of more than 30 years. His heir apparent, Hashem Safadin, was killed weeks later. Israel would also claim to kill Hamas leaders Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Diaf. A second three-stage ceasefire brokered by Egypt, Qatar and the United States came into effect in January 2025. Extensive Israel airstrikes resumed in mid-March. This year, the IPC Global Hunger Monitor declared famine in northern Gaza, saying that more than 500,000 people were at risk. Aid groups said Israel was restricting food and medicine. Israel accused Hamas of stealing supplies. Tel Aviv launched an airstrike on Qatar on the 9th of September 2025, claiming to be targeting top Hamas leaders. Qatar condemned the strike as cowardly and a violation of international law. Less than 2 weeks later, the UK, France and Canada were among countries to formally recognise a Palestinian state. The United States opposed the move. A US-led 20-point peace plan has proposed a ceasefire, hostage exchanges and a staged Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Both sides are looking for clarity in the details.
Now, US President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that he might visit Egypt this weekend as his team works to finalise the Gaza hostages for ceasefire agreement. He indicated that the trip would likely occur either prior to the release of the hostages or shortly afterwards.
I may go there sometime toward the end of the week, maybe on Sunday, actually. We'll let you know. If that's the case, we'll be leaving probably on Sunday, maybe Saturday, maybe a little later than Saturday evening, but that seems to be our schedule.
Staying in the US, the government shutdown has entered its 9th day, and President Donald Trump says most federal workers will eventually be compensated for missed wages. However, he also suggested that not everyone affected will be eligible, saying some people don't deserve support and will be taken care of differently. Trump once again blamed Democrats for the ongoing deadlock, while Congress remains at a standstill with no agreement in sight. Meanwhile, the Internal Revenue Service announced that more than 34,000 employees will be furloughed starting on the 8th of October, further impacting services across the country.
We're going to see most of them are going to get back pay, and we're going to try and make sure of that. But some of them are being hurt very badly by the Democrats, and they therefore won't qualify. Democrats want to make it worse. The Democrats want to approve health care for illegals coming into our country, many of them coming in from prisons and mental institutions and drug dealers, They want to give them health care. We don't want that for our people because that's going to destroy the health care that we already have. We'd like to make Obamacare better for people, less expensive. And
over in Europe, and European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is under fire this week, facing 2 no-confidence motions from opposite ends of the political spectrum. While she is expected to survive, the challenge exposes deep divisions over her leadership in the European Parliament.
It's not often Europe's far right and far left find common ground. But this week, they've come together for one reason: to try to bring down Ursula von der Leyen.
That we are in a period of maximum uncertainty.
The European Commission President is facing 2 no-confidence motions in the European Parliament. Unlike the last no-confidence vote in July, this push comes from both extremes. It is unprecedented for a Commission President to face 2 votes within 3 months, reflecting a fragmented Parliament and fragile trust between the Commission and centrist parties. The far-right Patriots for Europe, led by Jordan Bardella, accuse von der Leyen of surrendering to Washington on trade, pursuing senseless enlargements and failing on migration policy. Bardella called the US customs deal Europe's surrender. On the other side, Manon Albury of the left criticised von der Leyen's handling of Latin American trade, the Green Deal and migration, saying cheap imports kill our agriculture. Despite different criticisms, both extremes are challenging her authority and trying to shift power in Parliament. Von der Leyen responded calmly, warning Europe faces the most precarious and perilous state in decades. She defended her record and accused opponents of fueling divisions instead of strengthening the union. Senior centrist figures have already ruled out supporting either motion. The Socialists and Democrats Party criticised von der Leyen for being too close to US President Donald Trump, but said it will not back the challenge. The European Conservatives Party described the US trade deal as not perfect, but the best possible, while also noting that green policies have contributed to voter dissatisfaction. A no-confidence vote is one of Parliament's strongest accountability tools, requiring a 2/3 majority to dismiss the Commission, a threshold never reached. Since 2019, von der Leyen, the first woman to lead the Commission, has guided the EU through the pandemic, the energy crisis, and the war in Ukraine. But her leadership has caused friction not only with political extremes, but also within centrist blocs. Analysts say internal clashes in the European People's Party and Social Democrats have left a power vacuum, now exploited by the far left and far right.
Now, the United Kingdom and India have pledged to deepen their economic partnership following a meeting between Trade Ministers Peter Kyle and Piyush Goyal in Mumbai on Wednesday. The talks come as Prime Minister Keir Starmer continues his 2-day visit to India. The talks focused on boosting bilateral trade under a new free trade agreement signed in July during Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to London. That deal cut tariffs on goods including textiles, whiskey and cars, while opening markets to businesses on both sides. Officials say the deal could boost trade between the countries by over $34 billion by 2040. Now the world will find out on Friday who wins the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. Here's a look at how one of the world's most prestigious awards is actually decided.
The Nobel Peace Prize will be announced on Friday, chosen from 338 nominees worldwide. But how does the selection really work? It begins in Oslo with the Norwegian Nobel Committee, 5 people appointed by Norway's parliament. Each one is put forward by a political party, so the group roughly reflects the balance of power in Norwegian politics. Next comes the question of who can win. The committee follows Alfred Nobel's will from 1895, which says the award should go to whoever has done the most to promote peace, reduce conflict, and advance cooperation among nations.
Now, the more complicated answer is that needs to be placed in the current context. The committee operates with a dynamic understanding of the will for very good reasons. And there's no codification of exactly what is emphasized in the Nobel Committee's deliberations.
Thousands of people, including parliament members, heads of state, university professors, and past laureates.
The two largest categories of people with the right to nominate are firstly academics, and that would mean all professors and associate professors, even retired professors within all of the social sciences, theology, philosophy, law, and history. That's already quite a few people in the world that can nominate there. The second largest category is all members, all sitting members of national assemblies and governments anywhere in the world.
Nominations must be submitted by January 31st each year. From there, the committee creates a shortlist. Each candidate is reviewed by independent experts. The group meets about once a month and aims for consensus, but if members can't agree, they vote. While the names are secret, some nominators go public. Among those revealed this year are the International Criminal Court, NATO, Hong Kong activist Chow Hang-tung, and Canadian lawyer Irwin Cotler. And while leaders from several countries claim to have nominated US President Donald Trump, those submissions came too late to count. Experts say his current policies make a win unlikely. Instead, many expect the committee to honour humanitarian workers, journalists, or a United Nations body, though surprises are always possible. Finally, the winner receives a gold medal, a diploma, 11 million Swedish crowns, about $1.19 million, and global recognition overnight.
Now, Azerbaijan's COP29 presidency and the Commonwealth had led new talks in London on the world's growing sea level crisis. Our correspondent Aytan Abbasli has more from London.
A flagship climate dialogue co-hosted by the COP29 presidency of Azerbaijan and the Commonwealth Secretariat has brought global focus to one of the most visible but uneven effects of climate change, sea level fluctuations. Held at Marlborough House in London, the high-level event explored the contrasting challenges of the shrinking Caspian Sea and the rising oceans threatening small island developing states.
How are the current causes?
Commonwealth has been the voice for the small states, small island developing states, and Maldives is one of the strong leader on the small island developing states. We promote the concerns and consequences for the small island states from the impact of climate change. And the vulnerable countries continue to address these issues. And today, at this very important high-level dialogue, we heard about the high-level speakers, their contribution not only from our region, Caribbean, the Pacific, Indian Ocean, as well as the Caspian Sea, how they are affected. So together we want to ensure that we actually implement what we have committed at the COP presidency in Azerbaijan.
The dialogue featured interventions from senior representatives of COP29 and COP30 presidencies, as well as Commonwealth and UN officials, who underlined the urgent need for international cooperation and science-based solutions to address both falling and rising waters. An accompanying exhibition of environmental art by young creators from the Caspian region added a powerful human and emotional dimension to the event. The discussion, described as a milestone in Azerbaijan's COP29 presidency and a stepping stone toward COP30, underscored the importance of shared innovation, regional partnership and climate justice in tackling sea level challenges worldwide.
The Russia Central Asia Summit kicks off today in Dushanbe, bringing together the presidents of Russia and regional leaders for high-level talks on cooperation and security. The discussions are expected to focus on strengthening economic ties, boosting energy collaboration and coordinating efforts to counter terrorism. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin, on a 3-day visit, was welcomed by Tajik President Emomali Rahmon. On Friday, Dushanbe will host another regional event. the summit of the Commonwealth of Independent States. Leaders from member countries, including Azerbaijan, Belarus and Armenia, will discuss strengthening cooperation and key regional issues. As security measures tighten in Dushanbe ahead of leaders from Central Asian countries, including Russian President Vladimir Putin, arriving for the CIS summit, what will this event mean for the region? And will Moscow reposition itself within Central Asia? Our correspondent, Fariza Kalimazina, explains.
From October 8th to 12th, Dushanbe is under heightened security as it hosts a series of high-level events, including the CIS summit, a Central Asia-Russia meeting, and President Vladimir Putin's first state visit to Tajikistan in years. Markets are closed, prayers suspended, and residents urged to limit travel. Leaders of 8 CIS countries will meet on October 10th to discuss regional security, economic cooperation and humanitarian issues. The spotlight, however, is on Russia's talks with Central Asian leaders, focusing on counterterrorism and cross-border threats, with a joint statement expected. The meetings come amid Russia's war in Ukraine and growing sanctions pressure. Analysts say Moscow is seeking to reinforce its presence in Central Asia as competition from China, the European Union, Turkey and Gulf states intensifies. And recent Central Asia-China and Central Asia-EU meetings brought pledges of multi-billion-dollar investments, highlighting Russia's limited economic leverage in the region. Fariza Kalimazina, Almaty, A-News.
Earlier, we were joined by Nikola Mikovic, political analyst from Belgrade, who noted that Moscow's influence in Central Asia is fading largely due to its weakened position over the war in Ukraine. He added that Russia has failed to build soft power or expand economic ties, while countries such as China, the US and the EU are stepping in to fill the gap.
Well, one of the reasons I think is because it demonstrated serious weakness in Ukraine. And there are many aspects as well. For instance, Russia is doing absolutely nothing to strengthen its soft power in the region, unlike other countries that are doing that, other actors as well, the European Union and the United States especially. China, on the other hand, is increasing its economic cooperation with the region, but Russia has nothing to offer to those countries. It can offer its markets, the labor market, to countries such as Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, but to others, well, nothing special except security to a certain degree. But this adventure in Ukraine has demonstrated that Russia is very weak, both militarily and diplomatically. So, of course, all these actors now seek to develop closer ties with other actors and possibly even military alliances and military ties with other actors, not necessarily with NATO, but maybe with countries such as Japan, China, and so on. So they all have their own interests in the region, and they will seek to benefit Russia's very weak position in the international arena, and to, of course, to strengthen their influence in the strategically important region of Central Asia.
Turning to regional cooperation, Turkish and Syrian foreign ministers have pledged to intensify action in combating terrorism and stabilizing the region. Speaking in Ankara, Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said that Ankara will continue to support Damascus's fight against the Daesh terrorist group, emphasizing that Syria's security is inseparable from Turkey's own.
Turkish and Syrian foreign ministers have vowed to boost cooperation against terrorism and strengthen regional stability. At a joint news conference with his Syrian counterpart Assad al-Shaybani, Hakan Fidan underscored that Israel's continued airstrikes on Syrian territory remain the country's gravest security threat, warning that such aggression must be firmly opposed. Both Syria and Turkey accused the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, of undermining the country's security and unity, with the Turkish foreign minister reaffirming commitment to Damascus.
Suriye hükümeti DAEŞ'e karşı eşgüdüm halinde operasyonlar gerçekleştirme
The Syrian government has the will to conduct simultaneous operations against Daesh. We must all support Syria in strengthening its capabilities for this purpose. Turkey will continue to contribute to enhancing these capacities. The SDF, pursuing a separatist agenda under the guise of fighting Daesh, must abandon this approach. We thoroughly evaluated all these issues and the steps needed to swiftly implement the March 10th agreement.
The 10th of March agreement aims to integrate the SDF into state institutions, reaffirming Syria's territorial integrity and rejecting any separatist ambitions.
We demand the SDF and its leadership to put all effort into implementing this agreement. Failure to do so would harm confidence in Syria's unity and slow our reintegration process.
Al-Shaibani accused the SDF of stalling key measures vital to Syria's stability. Both ministers agreed that peace can only be achieved through joint comprehensive counter-terrorism efforts and pledged to continue coordination to ensure the March deal is fully enforced.
Looking to regional diplomacy, Ankara is set to host a high-level meeting of the defense ministers of Azerbaijan, Turkey and Georgia. According to the Georgian Defense Ministry, the meeting will discuss strategic partnership in a trilateral format. The defense ministers of Azerbaijan, Turkey and Georgia are set to meet in Ankara following last year's talks in Batumi. The Georgian defense minister will also hold bilateral meetings with his counterparts, after which the ministers are expected to sign a joint declaration and deliver statements. That's your news update from all of us in the studio. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.